Hi! Good morning again, historians. I hope you're comfortable. I hope you're good and healthy. I hope you're safe because we're still fighting with this COVID-19 pandemic. So let us always follow the protocols. Now, so much for that. I am Christine E. Floria, your host. So if you're ready, let us start our beautiful talk for today with new knowledges we can learn together with our friends and loved ones here in History Talks. Today, we have here two outstanding students who learned about the history of American period here in the Philippines. They came from the excellent college school of Surigao State College of Technology. So now, let's give hands to Mr. Mark Shane Villaronza and Mr. James Ignali. So good morning, students. Thank you for coming. We are honored that we have you here in our History Talks.
Yes, good morning. It is nice to be here with you today.
So I have learned that you two studied Philippine history, right?
Yes, we have been studying Philippine history upon our college year up until today.
Wow, that is so nice of you. Now let's start our talk for today. Let's talk about the time where the Americans colonized us. Now, Mr. Villaronza, I would like to know, or we would like to know, how did the Filipino react to the military and civil government established by the Americans?
After the Spanish-American War, while the American public and politicians debated the occupation question, Filipino revolutionaries under Aguinaldo seized control of most of the Philippines' main islands of Luzon and proclaimed the establishment of the independent Philippine Republic. When it became clear that U.S. forces were intent on imposing American colonial control over the islands, the early clashes between the two sides in 1899 swelled into an all-out war. America tended to refer to the ensuing conflict as an insurrection, rather than acknowledge the Filipinos' contention that they were fighting to ward off a foreign invader.
So, Mr. Villaronza, you're saying that in that time, they had a conflict with recognizing with each other's intent. I see. So going to Mr. Ignalig, what do you think sparked the Filipinos' desire to achieve independence?
I think the reason was that they wanted to be free from the oppression, maltreatment, and slavery from the colonizers. They wanted to get back our native land because we Filipinos are the true citizen of the Philippines, not the colonizers. Many Filipinos sacrificed their lives to achieve independence. That is why other Filipinos try their best to achieve their goal and continue what has been started.
Thank you, Mr. Ignalig. So now, learning how the Filipino react in that time of the American period. For you, Mr. Villaronza, if you have lived during the time of the Americans here in the Philippines, how would you have responded to the policies they have introduced to our country?
Our country, the Philippines, is a great country, and this might be the reason why colonizers such as Spanish and Americans have forcefully invaded it. My answer for that question is, there is no such a thing I would oppose the American policies if they impose it without prejudice or discrimination to any Filipino citizens, or simply if it is fair to everyone without looking any social statuses. But if it is the other way around, that's the time I will defend my beloved nation. I will not act as violently as what Katipuneros were before, because I don't want a amount of blood to be shed and lost in the battlefield. But I know to myself that I could and I would defend my nation, the Philippines.
Well, that is so brave of you, Mr. Villaronza. I think I am inspired with it, and I think also our historians out there. They are also inspired with your answer. So now, going back to Mr. Idnalig. Mr. Idnalig, how would you describe and assess the present government under President Rodrigo Duterte?
For the overall, I can say that he is incompetent in handling his administration. For instance, if we talk about on the DOH as one of the agencies of the government. Based on my research, the incompetence of the Philippine government has led to the delay in managing COVID-19. A dry run was conducted on the movement of vaccines from the airport to the warehouse and storage facilities. Unfortunately, there are no vaccines because it turns out the government has not signed a single deal with any supplier, and yet the government will not allow the private sector to procure any vaccine without the onerous provision that 50% of the vaccine will be donated to the government. If you recall, when news that a highly infectious virus from China threatened to trigger widespread infections to the Philippines, President Rodrigo Duterte responded by belittling the situation. He said, "There is nothing to be afraid of with this corona thing." He also said, "This is a small thing in our lives." These statements tell us that the President did not bother to consult experts, virologists, or epidemiologists as due diligence would dictate. Neither did Health Secretary Francisco Duque raise red flags on the gravity of the threat. The President maintained a cavalier attitude towards the virus, even if what was at stake was the very health and well-being of our people.
Okay, so Mr. Idnalig, you're focusing on how our present government today assess our problem with the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you for that answer, Mr. Idnalig. It's very good that we recall our history in the times of the American colonizers, because through this, we are still able to look back and give value and honor to our ancestors and to our country's history towards reaching independence, which we are having this day. So thank you for your presence, students, Mr. Villaronza and Mr. Idnalig, and also to our historians out there who are watching and listening. I hope you have learned a lot. Stay safe and healthy and happy. God bless, and see you on our next History Talk.